Just gonna say it. When a young woman sees a married, stable man, that is attractive. You know, he's figured out some of his bullcrap. He's got a wife that's happy, and he knows how to be a dad. I mean, like, I'm sorry, but that's gonna make any girl's eggs drop. I mean, like, any young woman would be like, oh, he is a marriageable.
He thought he was building a kingdom, a family destined for heaven. But what Kody Brown built wasn't faith, it was control. And when the illusion finally cracked, everyone saw the truth. Not a prophet, not a patriarch, just a man watching his empire collapse. You know, sometimes when people tell their own story, they accidentally confess to more than they realize. That's what just happened with Robyn Brown. When she sat there describing how she first noticed Kody Brown, she didn't talk about love or connection or even compatibility. No, she talked about how he was stable, how he had his life together, how he was already married, and how that made him more appealing. That's not romance. That's strategy. Robyn saw a man who was established, admired, already chosen by other women, and she decided that was proof he was marriage material. And when she says that, she's not joking. She actually believed that being attracted to a married man was somehow spiritual, a sign of his worthiness. But here's the thing. That's not a natural instinct. That's programming. It comes straight out of the AUB, the Apostolic United Brethren, the sect that shaped her entire worldview. In that system, a woman's value is tied to her ability to be part of a plural marriage. Her identity isn't who am I as an individual, it's who am I attached to. So when she saw Kody Brown, she didn't just see a man, she saw a ticket, a future, a celestial insurance policy. And that Yanni is a tragedy buried inside the romance that the show tried to sell us. It's disturbing when you really think about it. Robyn once said that seeing a married man can make a woman's eggs drop. Like, seriously, that's a phrase. As if a wedding ring triggers fertility. She said it with such conviction that people around her just stared, confused, maybe even a little disgusted. Because for most women, the idea of pursuing someone else's husband isn't exciting. It's wrong. But for Robyn, it was normalized. It was holy. That's the cult logic of the AUB. You take something that would be immoral in any other setting and rebrand it as sacred obedience. Because in that church, women are taught that married men are proven. They've already demonstrated they can handle responsibility. They're safe. But the cruel irony? Those same men are usually anything but safe. They're groomed to collect wives, not cherish them. They're trained to see women as assignments, souls to be redeemed, not partners to be loved. So when Robyn saw Kody Brown, she didn't see a warning sign. She saw a validation. And Kody, being who he is, proud, ego-driven, always craving admiration, welcomed that kind of attention. Here's where it gets even more twisted. There's a moment when Robyn starts talking about how women were reaching out online, sending messages, photos, asking about joining the family. And instead of shutting it down, instead of saying, no, we're done, this is weird, she actually entertained it. She would tell Kody about it. Sometimes she'd even send him pictures. Now pause right there. That's not just gossip. That's a recruitment ritual. Because inside the AUB, there's a rule called the Law of Sarah. It says that every wife must eventually find another woman for her husband, bring her into the family, and then hand her over. Think about that. You're not just asked to share your husband. You're asked to recruit the next woman who will replace you. The ceremony itself is symbolic and brutal. The current wife literally places a new wife's hand into her husband's, as if transferring ownership. That's what they call righteous. Mary did it for Janelle. Janelle did it for Christine. Christine did it for Robyn. And Robyn, she's never done it. So maybe, just maybe, part of her still believes she has to. That to fully earn her place in heaven, she has to complete that ritual. That's the kind of mental and spiritual not these women live in. They don't know if they're obeying God or betraying themselves. And the scariest part? They think it's the same thing. When Christine was the last wife for 16 years, she held that newest wife position, the prize one. She was the fresh energy, the nurturer, the one with the babies. But in polygamy, your status has an expiration date. Once you stop having children, your value declines. There are literal sermons, actual words from church leaders, that say when a wife can no longer bear children, she's to be taken out to pasture. They compare her to an old cow. Not joking. That's what they say. And taken out to pasture means exactly what it sounds like. She's no longer useful. She's spiritually discarded, even if she's still alive. So when Christine handed over Kody to Robyn, It wasn't just emotional. It was ritualized erasure. A spiritual death dressed up as obedience. That's what Robyn was raised to believe was normal. That's what she thought love looked like. No wonder she confuses loyalty with suffering. Kody Brown loves to rewrite history. He'll look into the camera and say things like, well, Christine couldn't handle it. She was too jealous. She didn't love me the way Robyn does. But that's not the truth. That's deflection. He's always had a favorite. And for years, that favorite was whichever woman made him feel powerful. Christine challenged him. Mary broke before him. Janelle ignored him. And Robyn worshipped him. That's why she became the soulmate. Not because of divine fate, but because she validated his ego. When Kody says he tried to love all of them, that's revisionist nonsense. He didn't try. He managed. He managed emotions, expectations, jealousy. He was a CEO running a corporation of feelings, not a husband building a home. And when he says, I didn't have the skill set, that's just a polished way of saying, I didn't care enough to learn. In every polygamous sermon, men are told they're spiritual leaders, patriarchs destined to guide their families to celestial kingdom. But here's the unspoken rule. Control equals holiness. The more compliant your wives, the holier you look. The more independent they become, the more fallen they appear. That's the poison that infects everything. So when Robyn gently tries to hold Kody accountable, when she says, you should have made sure all of us felt loved. You should have united the family. He shuts down, he deflects. He changes the subject. He mumbles, yeah, I failed. I just didn't have the skill set. It's robotic, cold, almost rehearsed. He's not processing guilt. He's performing humility. And Robyn, trained to walk on eggshells, immediately softens her tone. She backtracks. She reassures him. That's not a marriage. That's conditioning. At this point, what's happened between Kody and Robyn isn't love. It's survival. She needs to believe she made the right choice. He needs to believe he's still in control. So they sit there, trading half-truths and apologies, pretending they're making the best of the situation. Imagine being married 15 years and hearing your spouse say, I'm just trying to make the best of this. That's not devotion. That's resignation. Robyn asks, are you fine being out of polygamy forever? And Kody says, I'm scared of it now. I don't even know how I consider it. That's not faith talking. That's trauma talking. He's exhausted. She's terrified. Both of them clinging to a system that's already burned down around them. You can hear it in their voices. That numbness. That, I guess this is what's left energy. Kody isn't in love. He's rationalizing. Robyn isn't fulfilled. She's enduring. Together, they're not building a life. They're defending a narrative. Because if they admit it was all for nothing, the wives lost, the children scattered, the faith shattered, then what was it all for? And that's the haunting question polygamy never answers. You can call it faith, you can call it destiny, but in the end, it's about control, an illusion that submission brings you closer to heaven. For Kody and Robyn Brown, that illusion has become their entire identity. Without it, they have to face what's really left. A marriage built on fear, a love story that became a power play, and two people trying to convince themselves that tolerance equals love. There's a strange silence that follows collapse. It's not the chaos that hurts the most. It's the quiet that comes after. That's where Kody and Robyn are now. They've gone from center stage to isolation, from the loudest family on reality TV, to two people sitting in a house that feels too big and too empty. When you strip away the cameras, the fans, the drama, all that's left are two people who bet everything on a version of love that doesn't exist anymore. And the cracks are finally showing. Kody used to talk about legacy, the grand spiritual empire he thought he was building. But now, when he talks, you can hear the doubt. He's not preaching anymore. He's just trying to make sense of his own downfall. He'll say things like, I don't recognize myself, or I failed my family. But even in confession, there's still a layer of denial. Because for Kody, accountability sounds too much like surrender. And surrender, in his world, means weakness. Robyn, on the other hand, still speaks in the language of hope. She'll say things like, maybe one day we'll rebuild, or God will show us the path. But that's not faith anymore. That's survival instinct. She's clinging to the illusion that this pain still has purpose. Because if it doesn't, then she sacrificed everything, her reputation, her sister wives, her children's stability, for nothing. And that's a truth too heavy to face head on. So she avoids it. By cleaning, by mothering, by praying. She fills the silence with busy hands. And Kody, He fills it with anger, because anger for him feels safer than guilt. He rants about betrayal. He talks about loyalty. He paints himself as a man who tried his best. But if you listen closely, he never says sorry. He just keeps repeating, "I didn't know what else to do." That's not remorse. That's regret disguised as helplessness. And it's a pattern that's been there since the beginning. Remember those early seasons when Kody used to say, "I just want everyone to be happy"? That wasn't leadership. That was control wrapped in kindness. He didn't want peace. He wanted compliance. He wanted wives who would orbit around him like planets, loyal and predictable. But one by one, they drifted away. Mary lost herself first, clinging to the memory of the man she once believed in. Janelle followed next, quietly packing her emotional bags years before she physically left. Christine was the only one brave enough to say it out loud. "I'm done." And when she walked away, something inside Kody broke. Not because he lost her, but because she proved he wasn't untouchable. That's what this entire story is really about. Control slipping through his hands. Robyn saw that crack and panicked. Because for her, Kody's power wasn't just emotional. It was spiritual security. If he wasn't the patriarch she was promised, then what was she even part of? That's the dark side of faith-based relationships. When a man falls, the woman's entire world falls with him. So now, Robyn lives in a state of spiritual limbo. She can't go back to the sister wives. They see her as the wedge that broke the family. She can't move forward because she's still bound by the same belief system that told her this was God's plan. So she waits, in that house, in that silence, trying to convince herself that love is still possible inside a prison she helped build. And sometimes, late at night, you can almost imagine her realizing it, that haunting question whispering through her mind. What if I wasn't chosen by God? What if I was just convenient? Meanwhile, Kody's trying to reinvent himself. He talks about healing, about therapy, about moving on. But the truth is he's still fighting ghosts. He'll scroll through old photos of family trips, back when illusion still worked. He'll see smiles that weren't real, but were real enough for TV. And he'll wonder when exactly it all started falling apart. Maybe it was when the fame became a mirror too bright to hide behind. Maybe it was when the camera stopped cutting around the tension and started showing it. Or maybe it was when the wives stopped competing and started comparing. Because once they compared, they saw the imbalance. They saw that love wasn't shared. It was rationed. And once you realize you're living on emotional scraps, it's hard to stay grateful. That's what Christine figured out first. That's what Janelle finally admitted. And that's what Robyn still refuses to accept. She says she misses the family, that she wishes the kids would reunite, that they could all sit together again for holidays. But when she says it, there's something hollow underneath, like someone rehearsing a line they don't believe anymore. Because deep down, she knows the family didn't fall apart around her. It fell apart because of the system that put her on a pedestal. And Kody? He helped build that pedestal brick by brick. He fed the favoritism. He nurtured the divide. And now he's left standing on top of it, king of nothing. There's a moment, one of those quiet, almost uncomfortable moments in the new episodes, where he looks at Robyn and says, "I don't even know who I am anymore." And for once, it sounds honest, because he's not Kody the patriarch. He's not Kody the husband of four. He's just a man sitting in the ruins of his own mythology. And Robyn, she's not the savior wife anymore. She's just the last one left. That's the cruel irony of the story. She won, but it feels like losing. She got the husband, but lost the family. She has a house, but it echoes with the sound of everything that's gone. The truth is, they're both prisoners now, not of faith, but of memory. Every conversation circles back to the past. Every tear feels like a rerun, and every apology sounds rehearsed. Because they're not healing, they're narrating. They're trying to turn heartbreak into a storyline that makes sense, but life doesn't work that way. There's no script that can make betrayal poetic. No edit that can make loss look holy. And maybe that's the final lesson hiding beneath all the drama. That sometimes the thing you call God's plan was really just human pride dressed in religious language. Maybe the story of the Browns was never about faith or destiny. Maybe it was always about people trying to control what love should look like, instead of letting it be what it actually is. Because love, real love, doesn't require obedience. It doesn't demand hierarchy. It doesn't turn pain into proof of devotion. It just asks for honesty. And that's the one thing Kody and Robyn still can't give each other. So they stay in that house. Two believers without belief. Two lovers without trust. Surrounded by the ghosts of everyone who once called them family. And maybe one day, they'll look at each other and finally see it. Not the illusion, not the prophecy, not the spiritual justification. Just two people who mistook control for love and ended up alone together. Until then, they'll keep pretending. Pretending the silence is peace. Pretending endurance is faith. Pretending that what's left between them is love, when it's really just what's left. Sometimes the hardest part of any ending isn't losing what you had. It's realizing how much of yourself you gave away to keep it alive. That's where everyone around Kody and Robyn stands now. The wives who left. The children who grew up watching belief turn into bitterness. And the audience that once thought this was a story about faith and family, now seeing it for what it really was, a cautionary tale. For the kids, the fallout wasn't a single explosion. It was slow erosion, little moments, missed birthdays, tense phone calls, awkward silences during family gatherings that never quite felt like family anymore. You can hear it when the adult kids talk now. That quiet frustration, the kind you only get when disappointment replaces anger, because anger fades. Disappointment lingers. They watched their parents preach unity and live division. They heard about celestial love while feeling earthly neglect. And somewhere in between, they learned the hardest lesson of all, that faith can't fix people who don't want to be honest. Some of them still talk to Robyn. Most don't. And when they do, the conversations are short, polite, guarded, because they remember the hierarchy. They remember who was favored. To them, Robyn wasn't just a new wife. She was a symbol of imbalance, the moment their family stopped being home and started being television. And that's the part nobody likes to admit. The cameras didn't just document the story. They shaped it. Every tear, every argument, every stage apology became part of a brand. And once the world started watching, no one was living. They were performing. Kody especially. He became addicted to the lens, the validation, the control. When millions of people watched him every week, it felt like proof that God had chosen him. But the spotlight doesn't purify. It magnifies. And under that light, all the cracks showed. The wives who smiled through jealousy. The children who sat in the background while the adults preached unity. The man who mistook attention for approval. When the show began, Kody said, "We just want people to see that plural families can be normal." But years later, the world saw the opposite. They saw what happens when one man's spiritual ego consumes everyone else's reality. And now, without the cameras, Kody is left with what fame never gave him: silence. No confessional room. No producer asking, "How do you feel about that?" Just quiet. And quiet can be cruel when you spent years drowning it out with noise. Robyn feels it too. She once said she thought the cameras would protect her, that if the world could see her truth, she'd finally be understood. But the world didn't see protection. It saw favoritism, tears that always found the right lighting, and a woman who looked more like a queen than a sister wife. Maybe that's not who she really is. Maybe she was just trying to survive. But survival looks different when it's filmed. Now, she spends most of her time trying to rewrite the story in her head, telling herself the others misunderstood, that the public never saw the full picture. Because if she doesn't believe that, then she has to admit something even darker, that maybe she did play a part in the family's collapse. And that truth is unbearable. Christine, on the other hand, is free. She's not perfect, but she's free. She laughs louder now. She speaks without permission. She doesn't ask God for signs. She makes choices. When she looks back, she doesn't see failure. She sees survival. Janelle, too, calm, grounded, steady. She doesn't talk about celestial kingdoms anymore. She talks about peace, about simplicity, about finally being enough without needing anyone's approval. Mary, she's still figuring it out. She stayed longer than she should have, believing endurance was virtue. Now she's learning that leaving doesn't make you faithless. It makes you human. That's the quiet miracle hidden inside all this chaos. The women who were told obedience was holy are finally learning that freedom is, too. And that shift, that awakening, is what truly ended the Brown Empire. Not betrayal, not jealousy, not the cameras. Awareness. The moment these women stopped defining themselves by one man's approval, the system crumbled. Because polygamy, at its core, depends on self-denial. Once self-respect walks in, obedience walks out. Kody senses it. You can see it in his interviews now, the way his voice cracks when he talks about respect. He doesn't miss love. He misses control. He says things like, "They didn't honor the principle." But what he really means is, "They stopped worshiping me." And that's the most painful loss for a man raised to believe his authority was divine. Robyn, though, she's still trying to save the dream. She says she prays for the family every day, that she believes God can still bring everyone back together. But maybe what she's really praying for is forgiveness, not from heaven, but from herself, because deep down, she knows the truth. The family didn't die in one moment. It died slowly, each time love became a duty. Each time silence was easier than honesty. Each time faith was used to justify pain. And when you live that way long enough, you stop noticing when your soul goes numb. That's where they are now, in the aftermath of numbness. Not villains, not saints, just people who built a house out of belief and watched it collapse under the weight of reality. And maybe that's what this whole story was trying to teach all along. That love isn't meant to be managed. That faith isn't meant to control. That family isn't measured by obedience, but by compassion. Because when you strip away the rules, the doctrines, the fear, what's left is simple. Do you see me? Do you value me? Do you love me freely, without condition or hierarchy? That's all anyone ever wanted. That's all they ever needed. But Kody never learned that lesson, and Robyn's still trying to believe he will. So the story continues, not on camera, but in quiet rooms behind closed doors, where two people are still trying to resurrect something that should have been buried years ago. Maybe one day they'll finally let it die, not with bitterness, not with guilt, just acceptance. Because sometimes the holiest thing you can do is stop trying to fix what was never meant to survive. Time has passed. The cameras are packed up, the lights are gone, and what's left behind is the sound of wind moving through an empty house. A house that once echoed with laughter, prayers, and the kind of noise that made everyone believe they were part of something eternal. But nothing lasts forever. Not belief, not control, not the illusion that love can be commanded. Kody walks through that silence sometimes, replaying old memories like reruns a show he can't turn off. He still talks about destiny, about principles, about how the family was chosen. But even his words sound tired now, like he's trying to convince himself of something that stopped being true a long time ago. And deep down, he knows it. He's seen the footage, the interviews, the way his eyes changed over the years. He's watched the moments where pride spoke louder than love. He knows where it all went wrong. There's no audience left to clap, no producer to prompt him with questions, no wife waiting for approval. Just the echo of everything he thought he controlled slipping through his hands. For Robyn, life is quieter too. The dream she once protected now feels more like a secret she's ashamed to admit. She still calls it the principle. But the principle doesn't tuck her kids into bed. It doesn't heal broken trust. It doesn't erase the loneliness that comes from defending something that destroyed everyone around her. She says she believes in forgiveness. And maybe she does. But forgiveness isn't forgetting. Forgiveness is living with what you know and still choosing peace. And that's a harder prayer to answer. The other women have moved on in their own ways. Christine glows now, not because she's escaped, but because she's at peace. She laughs without guilt, loves without asking for permission, and finally believes that happiness isn't selfish. She doesn't talk about Kody anymore. Not out of hate, just disinterest. The chapter is closed. Janelle, steady as ever, found her rhythm too. She doesn't need validation or grand declarations. She found purpose in simplicity. She talks about health balance and learning how to breathe again. When people ask her about the past, she smiles and says, "It taught me everything I needed to know." And Mary walks with quiet strength. She stayed longer than anyone else could have, believing endurance was faith. But now she knows staying in pain isn't holy. Letting go is. She runs her business, travels when she wants, and sometimes, late at night, she looks through old photos, not to relive the pain, but to remind herself how far she's come. Because survival isn't just about leaving. It's about healing after you do. The Brown family that once preached unity now lives in fragments. Different homes, different paths, different truths. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's how it was always supposed to end. Because families aren't meant to be empires. They're meant to be sanctuaries. And when love turns in control, sanctuaries turn into prisons. The world watched your story unfold. The rise, the faith, the illusion, and finally, the collapse. Millions tuned in every week to see what reality looked like. But what they really saw was a cost pretending too long. Now, without the lights and the scripts, we see what's real. We see flawed people trying to make sense of what they built. We see the aftermath of belief when it meets human frailty. And maybe, just maybe, we see ourselves in that mirror. Because we all hold on to things that stopped serving us long ago. We all chase ideals that sound holy but feel hollow. And at some point, we all have to make that same choice. Keep pretending or finally tell the truth. That's the quiet message buried inside this entire story. Not judgment, not ridicule, just truth. That love without equality will always fail. That faith without compassion will always wound. And that control, no matter how spiritual it looks, always ends in loneliness. So if there's any redemption here, it's not for Kody. It's for everyone who watched and learned. Everyone who saw what happens when belief turns into bondage and decided they'd rather build something gentler. And maybe, somewhere down the line, even Kody and Robyn will learn that too. Maybe they'll stop chasing the past and start living in the present. Maybe they'll understand that love doesn't need witnesses to be real. Until then, the story remains unfinished. A reminder that some endings aren't explosive. They're quiet, soft, a sigh, not a scream. And in that quiet, there's something sacred. The sound of people finally stepping out of illusion and into truth. Because at the end of every fall, there's a moment of stillness. And in that stillness, you either break or begin again. You know, when a story like this ends, people always ask the same thing. Who's to blame? Was it Kody? Was it Robyn? The wives? The church? But maybe the real answer is, the system itself was doomed from the start. Because when you build a family on hierarchy, someone always ends up at the bottom. And when you build faith on fear, someone always gets silenced. The Brown family didn't invent this structure. They inherited it. They were born into a belief system that told them to sacrifice individuality for eternal reward, to swallow jealousy and call it holiness, to suppress pain and call it obedience. And for years, they did exactly that. They smiled through heartbreak. They prayed through isolation. They performed peace to the cameras, even when the cracks were showing in every frame. But here's the truth nobody likes to say out loud. Reality TV didn't destroy this family. It exposed what was already breaking, because a system that demands silence can't survive exposure. The moment truth meets light, illusion starts to fade. The show wasn't just about polygamy. It was about control, disguised as love. It was about women learning that God doesn't want them small. It was about men realizing that leadership isn't dominance, it's accountability. And that's where everything fell apart. The moment those women began to ask questions, real uncomfortable questions, the entire foundation started to tremble. Christine asked, "Why am I always last?" Janelle asked, "What do I actually want?" Mary asked, "Does endurance mean love?" And Robyn, even through her tears, started asking, "Did I make this worse?" Those questions were never meant to be asked. Not in that system. Not in that culture. Because asking questions threatens a hierarchy. It rewrites the script. It breaks the cycle. And that's exactly what happened. One by one, those women realized they didn't need Kody to define them. They didn't need a title like spiritual wife to feel divine. They just needed peace. And peace doesn't come from submission. It comes from truth. The irony is almost poetic. A family that preached eternal unity ended up proving the power of independence. They became living evidence that sometimes breaking away is the miracle. Kody still talks about destiny. He still calls himself a broken patriarch, still uses words like calling in principle. But the audience has already seen behind the curtain. They know it's not spiritual anymore. It's survival. Because when all the wives are gone and all the children are distant, what's left to lead? What's left to protect? Just a man, standing in the ruins of the empire he built, still trying to convince himself that the walls didn't fall because of him. But they did. They fell because the truth finally got louder than the doctrine. And maybe that's how it had to be. Maybe this was never a story about failure, but about freedom. The wives didn't lose faith. They just stopped mistaking obedience for love. That's not betrayal. That's awakening. And maybe that's why this story still resonates with millions of people. Because even if we've never lived polygamy, we've all lived illusion. We've all stayed somewhere too long because we were afraid of the truth. We've all called pain purpose just to make it bearable. That's why we watched. Not to judge, but to recognize ourselves. In Christine's courage, in Janelle's calm rebellion, in Mary's quiet endurance, and yes, even in Robyn's denial. Every one of them reflect a piece of what it means to be human, to want belonging so deeply that we'll compromise our happiness for it. Until one day, we realize that belonging built on control isn't belonging at all. And that's where the story ends. Not with a grand finale, but with small moments of truth. A mother laughing with her kids in her new house. A woman taking off her wedding ring and feeling her hand light again. A man staring at the empty chairs around a dinner table and finally seeing what he lost. That's the legacy of the story. Not just the fall of Kody Brown, but the rise of everyone who finally walked away. Because sometimes the most powerful act of faith is leaving